back to the show. I'm here with Anna Rova, the host of Girl Skill, and she is going to talk about how she decided to start a podcast using her intuition and branding challenges she's had, and a quite controversial story that she's going to tell us, and how she trusts her intuition and goes with it, even when she doubts, and how she makes decisions when there's no data. So, welcome, Anna.
Hi, Michaela. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, it is. And in case you don't know, Anna, she is a writer, a podcaster, she's a yoga instructor, and she is a location independent entrepreneur together with her husband. So both of them have their own businesses and travel around the world. Pretty amazing.
Ooh.
So tell us about how you decided to start a podcast using your intuition.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So as you, Michaela, know, but probably listeners don't, this is my second podcast, Girl Skill. My first podcast was Men Inside Show. So I was interviewing for about 2 years men about women in relationships. That was a really interesting experience. And so this is my second one. And now the whole side flipped, and I'm interviewing women about female success and what it means to them, femininity, womanhood, and so on. So in both of these cases, it was intuitive for sure. So the first one, I was constantly wanting to work for myself, and I was entrepreneur all my life, and I was looking for it, like this desperate looking for it feeling that a lot of us sometimes have. And what I realized how it worked for me is that I just got tired of looking for it, and it wasn't coming. And then as soon as I let go, the idea came to me, and I just trusted it, and I went with the flow. And it was great. The results were amazing, everything. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, that podcast is closed now. You can still listen to it on iTunes though. But it was just, I grew out of it, so to say. I was like, I matured out of it. I learned everything I needed to learn, and I let go. And so the second one, I was really missing podcasting. I was really missing having, powerful, deep conversations, being on stage, being that channel, doing my own thing. And when I quit my job, I started writing. I worked in online marketing before. I started writing, and then I was talking to my husband about how I miss it, and how I'm still so passionate about the subject of femininity, masculinity, the polarity between genders and all of that. And he was like, why don't you start a podcast again? I was like, oh my God. Like, it was just it was a question that I wasn't prepared for, and I never thought about it. And it took me a while to actually say yes, but then when I listened to my intuition and I asked myself, is this the right decision? Do I want to do it again? And then I remembered how I loved it, how I love being on podcasts, so on one side or the other. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I think it's going to be amazing. And here we are. Here we are with yesterday I released my 22nd episode, and I'm releasing 2 episodes a week, which is intense, but it's been such an amazing journey, much more than I have expected, and the learnings from it. And it's just 2 months in, but I'm really happy, and yeah, I'm getting some great feedback and lists from listeners, from everyone, about branding and everything. So we can talk about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So when you said that you were looking using your logical mind to see what podcasts to do, but then you decided to get quiet and you heard what to do from your intuition. I'm curious, how did you hear that? Did you actually hear a voice in your head? Did you see it? Did you have a dream? Something else happened?
Mm-hmm. I actually, yeah, it was a voice in my head. So I remember that moment actually. So at that time I was working in a company. I was living in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. I was looking, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I just found out that medium, and it was amazing. Like, it was such a revelation to me. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and so I let go of that need to find my thing, because I was also working in a company where everybody had their side project, and I didn't want to be less, or I didn't want to be on the sides. But then I said, okay, let go. And so listen to podcasts every single day was at the back of my mind. And then I was at an event, it was a tech event, and there was a guy on stage talking about, I don't know, just innovation and technology moving forward. And and everything. So the idea of the podcast came at a totally unrelated event, and and I was just sitting there, and I remember there was a voice inside that said, why don't you start a podcast where you interview men? And I was at the time also in my personal life, I just broke up with my boyfriend. We were together for 5 years, and I needed to start dating again, and I didn't know how to do that. I realized I didn't know anything about men. There was a lot of controversy between men and women. We talk to each other, but we don't talk, women talk to each other, men talk to each other. And there's so much that we don't know about each other, And so I saw that gap in my life. I saw the need in it. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and then I was at this tech event, and then everything kind of combined. I guess it was just the environment and the energy, like this kind of exciting energy, entrepreneurial vibe. And it just came to me. Yeah. I don't know why, I don't know how, and I listened to it.
Now, I'm interested that you say as a podcast host, you are being a channel. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
Oh man, like this time around. So with men, when I was interviewing men, it was a very different dynamic to what is going on now, right? So I kind of flipped the sign. And when I was interviewing men, I was a girl. Well, I'm still a girl and everything, but I'm a woman that was hosting men to come and tell their stories. And I think the dynamic is really different there, because the men are coming and they were very respectful. They wanted to share. There was a bit of flirt going on, so it was actually tough for me. That period, I think that those conversations really taught me how to talk. Currently, I can enter any room and I can talk to any guy. So it was a personal experience for me. I can talk to anyone. It was really a great exercise. But then when it switched, I didn't expect and didn't realize that Girl Skill will become a channel where so many women will come to share their stories. And some of these stories are quite intense and very personal. So I've had, Michaela, I had you on the podcast, which for me was an intense experience. It was very new, and it was out of my comfort zone for sure. Then I've had women, they talk about, their like rape situations and chronic illness.
Oh.
There's a woman who, has 5 children, was breastfeeding for 6 years in a row, birthing babies one after another. There was a woman in the US Navy who's a helicopter pilot that I completely didn't expect that she's going to say, this is not for me. And it's really hard. And I cry every day. And so, and I'm getting goosebumps from that. So I just thought, I'm just going to interview women about success in their lives and everything's going to be great. And it's still great. But I didn't expect that I will need to be holding that space for them, because it is going public. It is them coming and sharing their story. And I am the one, and I feel, so #honored and blessed to be the person who is there holding that space for them. And it's not an easy job. I had to do some energy clearings, and I was crying after a couple of episodes. It was just really, really intense, energetically, emotionally, because, women are so rich in there, men as well, but we go through so much, and a lot of this stuff is getting unexpressed. And especially with everything that's going on in the world now, a lot of women are just confused and like, what do I say? And how do I, I asked all women on the show the question of what is femininity for you? That in itself is such a powerful conversation, because a lot of them never thought about it. So yeah, it's been like a really intense, interesting experience. So that's why I say, it's been a channel pretty much for me and for them as well. Yeah.
So I'm curious, were you ever afraid of what people might think of you when you ask about these difficult topics, or you write about stuff that's controversial?
Yes. The direct answer to this is yes. I am afraid, although, the fear, they're different shades of fear, right? You can be scared physically, you can be scared of different things. For me, I am afraid of not afraid, I'd say I'm resisting confrontation, because by default, I'm a person that is like, has her pink glasses, super positive. I don't have situations in my life much anymore that are conflict based. I don't like conflict in the sense that not that I want to avoid it, but I just don't see the need for it. I think that we as humans can come to a certain conclusion. Either it's a debate, intellectual conversation where we don't need to offend each other. We don't need to insult each other. There is no need for conflict. But unfortunately, we live in a world where this is not always possible. And so for me, I think that it's really hard to get to that place where I know this will create controversy. I know this will create, just a lot of negative emotions, but I deep down inside, I know I have to do it. I know this is my message, and I know that my intention is good. So as long as I don't want to hurt anyone, as long as I intend to share my voice and just share my experience. And sometimes, like my recent article, it's called "I've Been Hurt Too, Sister, Let's Move On." It's really interesting because this is so I'm asking myself, why are you scared? And then I say, oh, all these women are going to comment and just, confrontation, call me names, whatever. But then I tell myself, but this is you. Like, this is what you're experiencing in your own life. These are your thoughts, and it's not only you. And so you deserve and you have the right to share just like anyone else. It's a voice. You're female. It's a voice. Like, just do it. And so I do it. But it's hard. Like, when I press the publish button, it's hard, and I'm always nervous, like, what are people going to say and everything. And based on that article, there was a woman on Medium who called me a psychopath and a sociopath, and I shouldn't be sharing these views. And not only this article, but many others. And to me, I don't know why, because I know that a lot. So I had a girlfriend before that I know that some women especially can't deal with it very much. Like, there's something that really hurts them inside, and they take it very personally. So I tend not to do that. I understand that person comes from their own place of maybe anger, hurt. So it's not me. It's like my article is a place that triggers them, and they respond to it. It's not me, and they don't know me, although they attack me directly, but it's not me. And so what I do is I politely reply. So I'm very good with boundaries, actually, something that I realized. I'm very good with boundaries. If somebody insults me like she did, I reply and I say, this is not okay. Like, I protect myself and I say, I don't want to be called that. This is not correct. Please don't do that anymore. And then if she continued, and then I just blocked her from my Medium. It's as simple as that. And I always tell as I said before, I believe in transparency and having good conversation, even though we don't agree. I believe that there's a lot of place for that, and this is where truth actually arises. But when someone is insulting me, is calling me names, is being disrespectful, I say, I'm sorry, but I won't engage in a conversation like that, and that's it. Either I block them or I stop. And this is where it stops for me, and I don't go there. But if I feel that the intention is good, in the sense that, Anna, I don't agree with it, I think this is bullshit, well, I don't know how I feel about that word, but still, like, the intention is there, saying, Anna, this is okay, let's talk about this. If they say let's talk about this, then I talk about this. If they're being disrespectful and crossing my boundaries, then I say, I'm sorry, you can find another place to rant, to call me a sociopath or whatever. I'm not going to engage with this. So yeah.
That's great. So do you find you're actually drawn to write about something when you're scared about it, or?
Well, it's really interesting because not really, I don't know how to explain it. Honestly, I don't have an answer to it, but by default, because I'm in a niche of, let's say, quote unquote, feminism, or this movement of feminism in today's world, a lot of the things are controversial by default. My thoughts, things that I write, because I have a contrarian view to a lot of everything, to a lot of stuff that's going on in the world right now. So by default, it would be controversial and then kind of scary, because I know that majority of women will not agree. And so, yeah, but I still do it because I know that there are women who will understand, who agree, who live their lives and they're happy. So, yeah, and it transformed my life. And so that's why I do it. But I wouldn't say I'm drawn to controversial subjects. As I said, my nature is so that I don't want conflict, because conflict is not productive, I think, so.
No, but more drawn. If you're scared of doing something, then that's what you need to share.
Oh yeah, I'm still working on it. It's work in progress. I can't say, yes, I'm scared, let's do it. It's always scary, and I know people who go on stage for years and years talk about this. It never goes away. What makes us human, I think. If I wouldn't have that emotion, then I think it would just be ruthless, like what's the point? But yeah, I think there's beauty in it.
So let's talk about how you picked your brand for Girl Skill using your intuition, because you've got quite an interesting brand there, and I think you had a bit of controversy with that too. So tell us about how you picked your brand and how you did that.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm getting a lot of compliments on the branding side of things, from, the logo itself. And I mean, the branding journey for Girl Skill was quite an interesting one. The same thing with Men Inside Show. If you go to meninsideshow.com, you'll see me, in a dress I have naked shoulders, and I sit and I stand like in between four men that appear to be naked. And there is a black, like a black line along their eyes. And so that was a really powerful image. And I worked with a couple of friends. I'm good at making people do things for me. And I'm good at actually motivating people and inspiring them. So when I was working in Malaysia, I have a lot of creative friends around, and I love working with creative people, and the whole creative production process is actually what I love doing. And before starting Girl Skill and my second podcast, I was thinking of getting a master's degree, in the movie industry. I wanted to be a movie producer. And so I was really discovering myself. And so with Girl Skill, the idea just came to me. I read the book Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, which I highly recommend to any woman out there. It's basically a Bible into womanhood and femininity. And because I was reading a lot of stuff on femininity and womanhood, that image of a woman who runs with wolves, and the way she describes how females are so similar to wolves, to the she-wolf. And I found that so powerful, and I was so inspired by it. And I said, all right, Girl Skill is going to be that. And yeah, it's been really interesting. So I've worked with a couple of designers, choosing the logo, the fonts, the colors. Like, it was a whole journey, but particularly what you're talking about. So my brand is based on wolves and women, and you can see on all of the brand pictures me staring at a wolf, or me running, like physically running with wolves, either like facing you or to the side. Then I'm like in winter, naked, supposedly covered with fur and wolves and everything. And so everything is based on that. If you go to my Instagram or website or anywhere I am, like, everyone knows that Girl Skill is all about wolves and women, which I'm actually proud of, because I get messages now from different girls around the world sending me these images with wolves and saying, this reminded me of you. So I'm like, yay, I've done my branding job right, But I never had like professional training or anything. This is all coming from inside of me. So anyways, to answer your question, so there was an interesting story where, those images where I'm running with a wolf or like staring at a wolf on my podcast cover, actually, so I was in Brazil, and I said, I knew that this requires a photo shoot. And then I had a really good friend who's a photo manipulator, and I knew his work, that he can manipulate different things to look, like fantasy world or whatever. So I knew it. And so I was at a co-working space, and there was a photographer there. Can you hear me, Michaela? Yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry.
Hear you good.
There was a photographer in the co-working space, and I didn't know how good she was. I didn't know, like, I looked at her work and it appeared okay. And I approached her and I said, this is my idea. Do you want to do this with me? And then she looked at it and she says, yeah, that'd be interesting. And she had some creative projects before. But as I said, like, this is the first, well, not the first one, but one example of following my intuition, that I didn't go out there and search for Brazilian photographers and who can do this for me. And I wasn't worried about it much, because I trusted. And by now I know that all of my ideas that are coming to me, I don't have to control, and I just trust that the end result is going to be extraordinary and amazing, and so it is. And so it is with, you know, in my personal life, in my business life, and everything. I just have to trust it, because time and time again it has proven itself. And so we agreed on a photo shoot, and it was on a Saturday morning. I was really nervous, and it was, you know, a professional photo studio, a photographer. She actually called a makeup artist as well. That in itself was an amazing experience for me. So I highly recommend to every woman to do a professional photo shoot, because it does something to your self-esteem. And I was really nervous, so actually I was really awkward, and they had to bring me alcohol to like loosen down and everything. And I'm a confident woman, like I love myself and everything, but it's such this weird experience, because all of these feelings come up, like I don't deserve to be here. Like, why am I here? Why is this woman putting makeup on me and stuff? So anyways, and so to prepare for the photo shoot, I had an image in my mind of how I would look like running with the wolves. So it was a wild woman. It was a woman of the forest. It was a woman connected to nature. And so inside of me, I had this idea that so I went and bought this brown kind of dress that is very wildish, like a cave woman sort of a thing. And I still have it, by the way. And then I wanted accessories, and I saw, if I'm going to run, like I wanted accessories. So I bought earrings. I bought things that go I actually bought like rings, earrings, everything. And then I said, oh, but I need something in my hair as well, because just, and then I wanted feathers in my hair. So I wanted a headband. I wanted feathers to kind of be closer to nature, or cave woman, wild woman, forest, stuff like that. And so I bought the feathers, which were actually on a dream catcher. And I didn't want the dream catcher, but the woman wouldn't sell it to me, and so I was like, okay, whatever, I'll take the dream catcher. And so I came to the photo shoot. I put that all by myself in my head, and they curled my hair and whatever. And so I did the photo shoot. So everything that you can see now, like running, I actually fakely run, so she can take some pictures and everything. And I was lying around, and I literally had to imagine that I'm looking at a wolf, that wolves are all around me. So it was a very cool, creative experience. And so I sent the pictures to the manipulator. He did them. There was a lot of back and forth, obviously, because like he doesn't know what I want and everything. But we got to the final result, and the photos were amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. It's going to be awesome, because like they're real wolves. And as you said, it looks real. And so on a Friday night, I did not know. So I was getting ready to release the podcast as well. And there was a cover where I am looking at a wolf, so from my profile, and their feathers in my hair and everything. And I posted 4 different options. The image was the same in all of the options. It was just the colors that were different. And I posted in 2 like female entrepreneurship groups of what cover should I choose, 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you think is better in terms of colors or whatever? And so I went to bed, and Saturday morning I woke up. And in one group, it was more than 100 comments. And actually the admin has turned off commenting and said, the last comment I saw was, Anna, I think you have what you want. I'm turning this off because this is out of hand, something like that. And then in the second group, the comments were not turned off, but there was a lot of comments. I was like, what is going on? Like, what's happening here, And so what I found out, and what I was confronted with, is cultural appropriation. I didn't know what was cultural appropriation at the time, but I quickly learned. So I started reading and sifting through these comments. I was like, what the hell is going on? So apparently the main issue, and there was a comment exactly like that in the comments, that one woman says, I'm very uncomfortable with the feathers in your hair. And I was like, what? And so I was reading through the
feathers.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole idea was that the image that I've put together for the photo show, the feathers in my hair and everything, it's culturally appropriating Native Americans. And the cultural appropriation is a big, big thing in the US. So the idea was like, I'm taking their image, so to say, to use it in my branding. And that also puts them together or aligns them with the whole wild cave people and all of that. So basically it would be disrespectful to the Native American people, Although I can say that there were 2 Native American women in the group. They didn't have a problem with it. They were like, do whatever the hell you want. It doesn't bother me. So anyways, long story short, to answer your question, I was faced with a decision. What do I do now? Because it was so true to me. And also I have to admit that now I see that all of my ideas about branding and wild woman and everything probably came from a stereotype, right, that I had of things that I saw in movies as a little girl and stuff like that, that a wild woman had feathers in her hair. I mean, honestly, to this day, I don't see a problem with it. But the decision was, what do? Do I stay with this branding or do I change it? And I didn't want to change it because it was me. And I was like, why am I doing this? But I had to make the decision. And the decision was, first of all, I mean, the main thing was about, do I want to have this conversation time and time again with a lot of women around the world as my branding and as my business grows? Do I want to have the cultural appropriation discussion, or I would rather have a discussion about what my business is actually about? Womanhood, femininity, what it is to be a modern woman, how to lead in a feminine way. And so I said, yeah, this cultural appropriation thing is not that important. The feathers in my hair are not that important, although they're me. And I said, yeah, don't want to deal with that. Don't want to be part of this discussion. And so I changed the feathers to the flowers. And so I went back to the manipulator, paid him money again, and said, I'm sorry, this is what happened. Can you please change the feathers in my hair to the flowers? He gave me a weird look, but eventually we worked it out. And yeah, it looks good now. and I still like it. Like it's a more feminine vibe to it, I suppose. But yeah, so my intuition, I listened to it when I did it. And then I listened to it again it was actually a really, really hard decision. I couldn't decide. I remember just sitting there and I was going deep inside and said, well, what should I do? What should I do? And I realized that the part of me that wanted to stay on brand and wanted the feathers was actually more of an ego thing, where it was, oh, I'm going to show everyone, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. But the true me said, is this necessary? Is this really, really important? Is that really your value? And then it wasn't, because it wasn't connected to my mission. The feathers are just feathers, So I was like, okay, whatever. I'm going to let it go.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm curious how you tell the difference between the voice in your head that's your ego and the voice in your head that's your inner knowing.
That's a really interesting question. And I don't have the perfect answer to it, because these kind of decisions don't happen often in my life. But as a business owner, as you know, sometimes we're faced with like, we don't want to offend anyone. And, we got to think about not only ourselves, but also our customers and our image. And I've actually talked to Mark Manson, who wrote the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, because I'm on his list. And I actually sent him this question, which was really interesting, because I really didn't know what to do. And then he answered me in a very interesting way. He said, in the past, I was pissing off a lot of people who were my customers, and they left. And then I worked really hard to get them back. So what is the most important are your customers, and what do they feel like, which still has to align with your true core and your mission. So that was really interesting. So to answer your question for the ego, and I think it's all about the intention and the vibe around it. If you're feeling angry, so I think the ego would be the one who's going to be like, no, you can prove everyone wrong, and you're going to show them. And there's anger and possibly hate, and there's a lot of resistance in there, which sometimes is useful. This is what drive the ego is, like slap on the face, do it. But from another side, the true voice in us will really ask the question, is this really important? Is this necessary? And do you feel good about it? And then I said, if I'm going to do it's a bit tricky, right? Because you don't know whether you're saying yes or no to yourself. But yeah, for me, it wasn't important. And then my inner voice, which was my true intuition, I suppose, was just telling me that, yeah, well, what is the most important thing here? What is your mission? Yeah, steer towards what makes you feel good. if you don't want to be involved in these conversations, don't. And a lot of women, actually, a lot of people want to be involved in that. And I just don't see the point of arguing about something that's not my main, like, why we're arguing about feathers in my hair. You know what I mean? It's like, there's no point to it. So let's if we are to argue about a controversial subject, let's argue about what really matters. How are you working with your femininity? Are you discovering your womanhood? What it is to be a woman for you? So that's my main question, not why am I wearing feathers in the hair, because that's not important. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried my best.
Yeah. So it sounds like your intuition voice was the quieter of the two voices and the calmer of the two voices. You know, the angry voice was more loud and wanted to be right, and the intuition was more like, this is what makes sense.
Yeah, wanting to be right. I think that's exactly that. The ego wanting to be right, wanting to prove your point. Although, and I've done that before, you know, I have a lot of masculine energy, and I've done that before many times where I didn't stop to actually ask myself, is this important? Is this really worth my time, my energy, my effort? Or am I spreading love? You know, am I spreading positive, good vibes? And am I having a good conversation? And if the answer is no, then I just step back and I move on. And that's really hard to do, I know, for a lot of people, but it doesn't matter, you know? It's all about love at the end of the day.
Yes. So have you always trusted your intuition since you were a child, or did you have to learn how to do that?
Yeah, I always trusted my intuition, and then it's a very good question, because as we talked previously before, I didn't know it was intuition or whatever, but I had such a strong inner voice since I was a little girl. I always knew what I wanted to do, always. I'm a natural leader, and I'm also very rebellious, and that rebellion inside of me actually, my inner voice and my intuition saved me from a lot of different situations in my life. I'm very intuitive and very sensitive, but I'm not like, I'm very strong, like I have a strong character and a lot of masculine energy, but it honestly saved me from, I can't even imagine how my life would be. And I can give you an example. When I was 17, I was living in, you know, I call my story a Cinderella story, like a modern Cinderella story, simply because, and I know you're probably going to ask me this, but I lost my mother when I was 8. And my dad, you know, was looking for a new wife and a new mom for us. And for me and my sister, she was older than me 4 years. And we were never against it. In fact, we wanted to have a new mom and everything. But so it happened that my dad chose a wife that turned out to be an evil stepmother, so to say. And I had a very hard time with her. And when I was 17, it was a constant fight. It was a constant, those years were so hard for me. I was suicidal at some point. And there was a lot of rebellion and drinking and alcohol and smoking cigarettes. And, you know, people would tell me that I would either end up in jail or become a millionaire, just like Richard Branson, you know? So, so I think I'm going towards the millionaire side, hopefully. But yeah, there was a point where my boundaries and my, you know, inner guidance, as Abraham was so invaded. So there was someone in my life, which was a stepmother, or, you know, she might be representing some energy or something like that was invading on my inner guidance so much that I was already 18, and I packed my bags and I said, I'm done. I can't live here anymore. I can't live with you anymore and whatever. So I packed my bags and I left. And I was 18. I didn't know where to go. I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. And I remember, you know, my suitcases were out of the door and he slapped the door in front of my face. And I was still in high school. And I had to drag down these 2 suitcases from the 4th floor down, and I had to drag them. And I was lucky and fortunate enough to have an aunt that had opened her doors, and she didn't have any children. So I ended up living with her for about 6 months until there was another conflict. I had to leave her with my bags, go and crash somewhere for a week. And anyways, it's a long story. But that moment, that moment was a definitive one moment in my life, because if I would have stayed, and I know this for sure, she would have crushed me. She would have crushed my spirit and my inner guidance that was so strong. And many different lives, like many different times I choose to go right or left. There's many this different, like literally even, do I go right or left? And then I just go left. I have a very strong sense of awareness, direction, space, who to trust, who to not trust. And yeah, always knew what I wanted to do in college, always knew what I wanted to do with my life, with myself. It's really interesting. Yeah, when I look back, I always kind of was very clear about what I wanted to do. Of course, there are moments of unclarity here and there, and I doubt myself as well sometimes, but not as much anymore, because I know that I'm on the right path. Yeah.
That's great. So, and I think just using that, deciding whether to go right or left, like if you're lost in a new town, and instead of reaching for your GPS on your phone, just to follow your intuition and see if you can figure it out. I mean, what's the worst case? You get your phone out and look at it. Best case is you trust yourself.
I don't know. If I had a GPS, I'd probably take out a GPS and look at it. But simply because it's going to save me time. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, if I don't have a phone or anything else, like I don't sit there and being in panic, or if I have to make a business decision or a decision about to go or not to go, I don't sit there and, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do, left or right? I don't start calling everyone or whatever. I just go. And if I make a mistake, that's okay. I just turn around and go the other way. Well, it's a big deal, so that's how we learn. So, yeah.
So when did you leave the country you were born in? You were born in Moldova. Which,
I was born in Moldova.
Tell people where that is. Where is that for people who don't know?
Yeah, Moldova is between Romania and Ukraine. It's a tiny country of 4 million people, now less because a lot of people have moved overseas to work. It's allegedly the poorest country in Europe, where income is between $400 and $500 a month. Yeah, economically, it's not developed at all. There's a lot of corruption, and still politically, the country is very divided. So I'm from there. I left, actually, when I was 17 or 16, I won a competition, and I went to the United States for a year where I was an exchange student. So I lived in an American family in Virginia, went to high school. That year was one of the best years of my life and really transformed me in many different ways. Yeah, and then I came back, finished high school with all these, drama of moving out and leaving home and everything. And then I went to college, and actually went to an American university in Bulgaria. And that's it. So I'd say more than 10 years now was when I left Moldova. And I come back every year, obviously, because my family's there, and I've repaired my relationship with my father. And not with my stepmother, though, just with my father. So yeah, it was a long time ago. And since then, I'm just traveling around the world. And for the last 2.5 years, I'm actually full-time on the road as a digital nomad or location independent entrepreneur. Yeah.
So, as an entrepreneur, how do you make decisions when you don't have any data?
Yeah, that's a good question. And a lot of times you wouldn't have data, or, yeah. So I find, especially today, there's so much information out there. And as my husband says, and I absolutely agree with him, it's like, I don't need more information. I don't need more education at this point. I need implementation, because I think that's one of the major blocks that a lot of us entrepreneurs have. Is there's so much out there, and everybody wants to teach you something, and there's always going to be someone or something that you can learn from, or just learn along. So for me, yeah, you just feel like, what's the right way to go about it? I tend to analyze things. So in my mind, I make a very quick decision of like, what is the right way to go about this? Is this right or is this wrong? Is this, you just kind of have your own thought process inside. and what makes sense to me. It's like, what would make sense at this point right now, if I didn't have any more time, any more resources, whatever. What makes sense right now? I sit there and I say, maybe this, maybe that. Okay, let's go for it. So once I make a decision, I just go for it. That's it. And a lot of the times it might be wrong, actually. And I've had these times, and it's okay. It's just a correction in your path that you learn from it. It's all learnings, right? So you learn from it, you turn back, you evaluate, and you move forward. Like in my recent case, I was working with my virtual assistant that, and it was a really hard time for me. In the beginning, it was great. And then something happened and I was not sure, should I hire her again full time or not? And then I went for it because my intuition told me that I should. And maybe that was the right decision at that time. Probably it was. But then 3 months later, slowly, things were unveiling, because there's a lot of things we don't know at this point here. Like you can't know what's going to happen tomorrow or in 2 days or in 2 months. You just don't know. And so you make the decision. You make the best decision with the resources available at this point in time. You trust yourself. Then you do it. And then if tomorrow the decision proves wrong, then you correct it. And then you say, okay, that didn't work out. Let me just move around and go and create more space, more energy, and make another decision. It's kind of like, what do I do here? And it's not a big deal. It's, yeah, we fail, but we'll learn and we get up and we go again. It's just part of life. There's beauty in it as well. Yeah.
So do you have any practices that help you hear your intuition better?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a certified yoga instructor, and I do a lot of yoga. Yoga is something that I can't live without. So, and it's interesting, you asked me this question. I haven't thought about it much, right? Because now that we're having this discussion, I'm thinking about it. I think yoga really keeps me grounded. First of all, in my body. So I move my body, and what they say, it's like, if you want to get in tune with your body, you got to move your body, you got to work with it. I still have to work with my relationship with my gut and my vagina, because I'm a woman, but I'm getting there. But yeah, so yoga keeps me grounded, moves my body. It releases a lot of stress and a lot of blocks. It clears my mind, which is really important. So yoga is the time where I meditate, where I just sit in a pose and I breathe. So breath. So yoga has done wonders for me. That's why, I did the instructor course and all that. But I also have like a morning routine that really helps me clear all this chatter and the less chatter in your mind, the clearer you see or hear your own voice, right? So for example, I stopped scrolling Facebook maybe about a year ago. Social media for me is something that I don't like necessarily, and I don't hang out much, but I like to share. So that's interesting. I like to share, but I don't like to scroll there and comment on other people, but I just share for myself. I express my voice. I share my story. So that's what I do. So that the distraction of that has been eliminated from my life, although I use it for business much more, and I communicate with people via chat and WhatsApp. In the morning when I wake up, I do morning pages by Julia Cameron from The Artist's Way. I pull out a tarot card every day, which has been really interesting for me. So that was really cool. I track my cycle. So I track my days and my cycle and the connection to the moon. I'm fascinated by all that stuff. I meditate, I do yoga, and yeah, I just do activities that make me happy. Recently, so I started writing again. So I write on Medium, and I recently took up drawing, watercolor drawing, and doing some like creative meditations and art that I find super helpful for like art therapy and getting all this chatter out of your mind. And it somehow I feel like these creative activities, journaling, meditation, yoga, it's kind of like clearing the way. It's like removing all the debris and all the dirt around. And sometimes it's good to stay still as well and not do anything. And I love this quote by Alan Watts that says, muddy water something about muddy water is best cleared by letting it sit still, or something like that. I find that that's a great metaphor. So yeah, that's what I
That
do.
is. So the muddy water would be your mind filled with worries and thoughts and other people's stuff. And the clear water is after you've done all these morning routines that you do.
Yeah. So, like when you have sand or muddy water, and if you keep stirring it constantly, it's constantly muddy and there's a lot of chaos going on. But if you let it sit still, how the heavier particles, they just drop down. And then what remains on the top is the clarity. So I thought that was a very interesting metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that we do in our lives that stirs our water up would be, social media or watching TV or having drama with other people or various addictions that we have, with
Yeah.
drugs, alcohol, food, so on.
Yeah, and these are ways, I'd say that, and I've done this multiple times. These are ways I think that we run from ourselves. So I think the biggest fear that we have is face ourselves. And so for me, it was the case previously, right? Like when something was happening, I just couldn't deal with it. I was going out and, I was drinking alcohol, doing drugs, having sex, riding my bike, because it was just, especially when I started this digital nomad journey, it was really hard. And so I've done a lot of work on myself, and I've done a lot of self-love, self-healing, self-everything. And once you do that work and you start understanding yourself and loving, and you know that you are you're just protecting yourself. And once that relationship is established, I feel like the need for distractions and the need for, running away from yourself is not there anymore, because it's not necessary. That you can, and occasionally I do that sometimes as well, so I'm not perfect in it. Sometimes I would have an occasional cigarette, or something like that. I'm like, okay, I'm done with it, especially when I'm tired or I finished a big project. But less and less I have the need for even sugar cravings, right? Or something like that, because I know who I am, and I love that part of me. And yes, that's it.
So what's the biggest fear you have remaining in your life, Anna?
Oh man, okay. So on the surface level, I'm afraid of waves, so surfing, and I'm afraid of insects. So I hate cockroaches and I hate spiders, and the feeling of somebody crawling on top of me is a very weird thing. But the more spiritual fear is fear of death. And I think this is related to my mother's death. So I've done quite a bit of work in that area. But yeah, there's something about darkness. And I remember as a little girl, I've been always afraid of darkness and what is it? The phantoms and all these ghosts and stuff. And, I know that if I'm afraid of it, that means I believe in it. Because if I thought that was all bullshit, I wouldn't be. So yeah, I don't watch horror movies. I don't listen to these stories. And because I know the moment somebody is looking at me and telling me, oh, this is what happened to me, I know this is true. I believe people. And then I start being all like, so it really scares me, that world. And, it's probably related to my mother's death and all of that. But I feel like that's something that I'm yet to work with, possibly a bit later in my life, because I'm still in my 20s. And maybe when I become a mother, that would be the next step. But I feel like that's something that I will come to. And the realization that we are mortal as well. Sometimes I think, sometimes the realization that this body, it's going to happen. It's unavoidable, right? it's going to happen.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it. But you know what I mean? This body and me is going to be gone. Well, not me, but the body is going to be gone. I'm going to be dead at one point. 30
so
years
if you know you're 30 years, I hope you live a little longer than that. If you know that your spirit continues after your physical body dies, then why are you afraid of other people's spirits that continued after their bodies die?
Well, that's the thing. You said, I know. I'm not sure I know. I don't think I do yet, or maybe I'm not convinced 100% in that theory,
Mm.
right? I believe in like different lives and everything, but I think there's a bit more work to be done in the sense, does that really happen? You know, does it go anywhere? I believe in spirit and everything, but I guess not as much yet to be so convinced. And then the second part to your question is, I think I'm really sensitive to the outside stimuli and people telling me different stories and what's happening and all of that. And so I think as a child, I've been really scared and I've been bombarded with this world of ghosts and death and how scary everything is, and the
Mm.
dark side, um, and you know, I'm interested in that as well, of how does it manifest, and vampires and monsters and shit like that. So there's a little girl in me that's still afraid, and I think still believes in it. And I don't know if they don't exist really. You know, I don't know what happens at night, and I'm scared of the darkness sometimes. And yeah, it's a
Mm.
little thing in me that I there is still work to be done.
Yay. So
Yeah.
let's end this interview by talking about why you're proud to use your business intuition.
Whew, I'm proud to use my business intuition because it leads me, because it's fun, and because it's based on me and not on some external factors, on what other people tell me. And, you know, in business, I've come to the point where I have just 1, 2, 3 trusted advisors, or maybe a group of people that I really trust. And if I need advice, I ask them. But a lot of times I, I don't, in the sense that I trusted myself so much at this point where I don't want to be overwhelmed. And as I said,
Mm.
there's so many distractions right now. I find they're actually hurting more than helping. So I'm very proud to use my business intuition, because if something happens or whatever, I don't panic and go on 300 groups and post this question or start Googling. You know, start Googling. I think is the worst thing you can do is like, so, well, depending on the situation, right? If there's completely new area or whatever. But I feel like I know everything I need to know, because I wouldn't be faced with this specific situation if I didn't need to learn that specific thing, or that specific, if I didn't have to go through that specific experience at this point in time. So right now at this point I'm here, and I'm not going to be given a situation where it's like, oh, am I going to lose $1 million because I don't have them yet, you know? So it's constant growth. And I feel like the more you come from a place of making decisions based on your own intuition, because this is your business. Your business is a reflection of you. I know that if something happens in my business, it's me. I always turn around and I ask, what did I do wrong? Or how did my energy in this certain, even with the girl with my virtual assistant, you know, I've asked myself multiple times, and I'm only blaming, well, not blaming, but I know it's my fault. Like, I wasn't showing up, and it's
Mm.
obvious I wasn't showing up, therefore it wasn't working. It's my business. It's not her business. It's not anyone else's business. So yeah, it's, you know, the business is a direct reflection of you and what's happening in your life. If something's not working in your business, that means that something is out of alignment in your life. And yeah, so that's why I'm proud to use it, because it gives me much more satisfying results. Probably not the best results in terms of data, right? So I could have made another decision and I could have made money by now already, or you know, made thousands of dollars. But is that really the importance? Because entrepreneurship is all about, I feel it's a personal growth journey, really. You know, it's you finding yourself, finding solutions,
Yeah.
seeing the results, because that's what matters. I feel we grow. Yeah, my bank account grows and we personally grow.
I mean,
So bank account is important.
I think that's a lot of the reason why people are entrepreneurs. I mean, you know, there are many reasons, but the personal growth that can come from having a business, if we're open to it, is enormous. It
Yeah,
really is a mirror into ourselves and what areas we could work on
absolutely.
to grow ourselves. So
Absolutely.
great. So given how important business intuition is, and I'm on a mission for all entrepreneurs to openly use their intuition, because I think they'll make more money and be more happy doing that. And also they'll make less dumbass decisions that hurt other people and hurt the planet. Unfortunately, a number of people who still do those things. So what would it take to make business intuition more openly used in this year?
For me, or in general?
You take it either way.
Okay. Well, I think going back to that metaphor we talked about the muddy water, let it sit still. The more we stumble around and distract ourselves, and the doing, we're in the hustling generation now, and the doing, and I feel like it's really important to stop and let it be. And I found myself in my business and in my life, a lot of the times, if I just let it be and don't do anything about it, it's going to solve itself, honestly. And then you realize there's no need for all that stress, because at the end of the day, I think, to answer your question, I always remind myself that at the end of the day, it's all a game. We don't know. No one knows what the hell we're doing. Even the most confident people, the millionaires, whatever. They look like they know what they're doing on past experience, but everybody has their own fears. Everybody is asking themselves, is this going to really work? Am I going to fail? How is this going to look like? And it's all a game, and we're just playing our own part in it. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. It's like, it's all terminal in a way. It doesn't mean that like we don't have to take charge of our own lives and all of that. But if you look at it, there's so many opportunity out there. It just depends on what you want. And if this doesn't work, then there's always another door. So I think that's the answer to you just using your intuition, being true to yourself and to your values and how you interact with other people, how you affect them. Is it bringing them joy and love? Is your intention coming out of that place, or you want to prove something to someone or yourself, which is really not the point? So does that answer your question? I guess it does.
It does.
It's
4 answers to my question. So if people want to find you online, Anna, how can they best do that?
So I highly encourage you to subscribe and listen to my podcast, Girl Skill. If you go to iTunes, type Girl Skill, you will find me. Of course, the website is girlskill.com, as I said, on iTunes. And then if you're curious about my writing, it's on medium.com/Anna with double N Rova, Rova. You can find me there, and your Girl Skill is on Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, is Wanderova, WANDEROVA. So I'm there. But, in this day and age, I find that people can find whatever they want if they really are looking for it in the right way. So, in the right channels. Just Google. That's it. Yes.
So we'll put all those links in the show notes, which you can find on intuitiveleadershipmastery.com, together with the other things that you mentioned during the episode about the books and various podcasts you talked about. So thanks so much for coming on the show today, Anna.
Thanks, Michaela. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. It was a really interesting discussion.